Welcome to King Tiger Martial Arts Podcast, where we explore how martial arts builds grit, leadership, and life skills for success. Today, we have an extraordinary guest, Chief Master Dr. Greg Moody. He's not only a martial arts master and prolific author, but also was a literal rocket scientist and engineer. He's got a master's in counseling psychology, and he's also in practice and has a PhD in education, with his dissertation being on bullying. Dr. Moody, welcome.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Quite an introduction. Thanks, Master Cielo.
Yes, could you let our audience know how you shifted careers from engineering and developing technology to developing black belt leaders through the martial arts?
Yeah, it is an odd background that I have, engineering, psychology, and then education, and then being a martial artist the whole time. But I've been a martial artist since I was in my 20s, and so while I was an engineer, I was doing this, and I loved what I did in engineering. I built rockets and things, and it was great. But I also knew that I really liked people too, and martial arts was a great way to help people, influence people, help them get better and develop as humans. And I also realized all during that time I was teaching, get my master's degree, get my PhD. So I started my schools. I went out and visited a friend of mine, a guy named Michael Caruso, and he has schools in Pittsburgh, Grand Master. And I saw his school, and it was professional and nice and wonderful. It's not that my school might have been like you in the old days. My school in the old days was, tile floor with chunks out of it, and it wasn't very pretty, and it was pretty hardcore. But this guy had something that was really professional and more like the school that you have, and more like the school that as I built them. So then I came back from that experience just going, wow, this is the perfect combination of kind of my process background from engineering, my education background, and the psychology background, and then all the martial arts background. It really became the perfect work for me at that moment. So none of the things I did were things I regret or aren't really contribute to what I do now that help me in the work that I do with martial arts school owners and our students. So it all kind of fits together. It's just hard for people to see how that fits together and with such a different, diverse experiences that I've had.
Absolutely. With such a unique background in martial arts, you're a multi school owner, 8 locations, you're practicing therapist, author, speaker, education expert, and engineer. How do these disciplines intersect in your approach to teaching and developing character?
Well, I think the engineering thing is a good foundation for building a business and having processes. For a lot of people that kind of went out, finished high school, and then became a business owner, they haven't worked in a place where there's systems, and so that helps with the way the business is run. But there's no real disconnect to me between how the business is run and how the students are taught. All those things overlap together. So the books I've written and the other things that I've done all kind of came, I think, from that foundation of engineering and understanding the processes. So now we have a really systematized way we teach. I've got many instructors, and they all teach exactly the same way. We've got everything's very structured. On one hand, some people, especially in the martial arts field, might think, well, that's restrictive. But really, what it allows for is there's a structure for people, and then allows them to be more creative and expansive on top of the structure that I provide. So it really all kind of fits together. The counseling psychology background has been wonderful, and I have a very small practice. I don't do that as my main thing, but because I get to spend a lot of time working with people on, real issues that they may have, helping with communication, helping them interact. I work with a lot of couples, and I love doing that too. But then it translates back to the martial arts, so my students get the benefit of that. Like just recently, I produced. I'm getting ready to put a book out on conflict resolution. So conflict resolution is such a common problem that everybody has, and nobody teaches us anything about that. If you're married or you're working with your boss or anybody else, nobody really teaches you how to do conflict resolution. So the psychology background gives me that, and the bullying work and the education work, of course, applies to what we do in martial arts. So I think we can, not just in my schools, but all the people I love working with, like you. Hopefully, I can contribute to their development and hope with their and help with their students.
Okay, that's awesome. And I have seen that you've got some really good processes that we've had a peek at, which is completely awesome. At your locations, you've worked with over 16,000 students. What have you discovered about psychology of success in children and adults?
That's a really good question, and there's a lot of things. I mean, but I think the things that apply to kids also apply to adults. But the difference is that the adults have to be good at um, being leaders to their kids. In other words, we hear the question a lot, and I just wrote a book on parent action plan fear and about anxiety and fear in kids when kids don't feel like they can do something. And you know, I have empathy for parents because we don't, as a parent myself, I don't get education in how to be a parent. You don't get education in how to deal with these little kids that come up and all the different stages they go through. So the both parents and kids, or both adults and kids, have anxiety or have fear about doing something. And really, if we don't overcome the fear and anxiety, it's hard for us to accelerate to something great. If we're learning at a young age that when something's scary, something feels difficult, or something is unusual, that we stop, we don't do it, we don't move forward, then we're always going to be when we're an adult, we're going to be that way too. And as adults, you don't have your parents helping you out. So you have a lot more challenges, a lot more things that uh, are going to get in your way as you want to move up in careers or you want to choose to do something. And for adults that didn't get an experience with their parents when they were young, where they helped them through fear and anxiety, then they're going to end up that way as an adult, and they're always going to be at the lowest common denominator of their potential success and their potential as people. And so to me, I'm pretty evangelistic about that's important. And so what I talk about in the book, and what I think I've learned in the, relating psychology for adults and kids, is when you're a parent, it's very difficult to know what to do when your kid is scared or isn't feeling like they're capable of doing something. And we hear a lot of parents say the words, "Well, I don't want to push my kid." And conceptually, I understand I get the vision of, a parent who makes their kid do gymnastics for the Olympics out in Russia, and they have to get from 3 years old, they have to start at 2 in the morning, and then they go to sleep at 10 at night, and they just like beat them up. That's not really what is important. And I've thought about this a lot, and we came up with a concept, to help parents get through this idea of how hard should I push my kid, or how should I push my kid? And I really came to realize it isn't a parent's job to push their kid. It's a parent's job to teach their kids to push themselves. And if they don't model that and get them through times of anxiety, then the kid's not going to learn that. So it's our job until the kid, I think, is 18, or maybe even older. Sometimes, hopefully, they get it by 18. But to build the skills, of course, they got to do, rewriting arithmetic. Of course, they got to do things that they know how to kind of, mow the grass or do whatever other things. But they've got to learn that when unusual things come out, then we can help them get through it. And that's why I think martial arts and what you do is so fantastic, because we're trying to get our students to become black belts and second-degree black belts and third-degree black belts. On purpose, that's not easy. If a parent doesn't have their kid feel like, oh, I don't feel like going to class, or I don't know if I can do it, or I don't, then they're not doing enough. That's how we know as parents that we're doing the right thing for our kid. If the kid has resistance, because if the kid doesn't have resistance and they're not getting to their edge of growth, they're going to do fantastic. So teaching your kid that when they get up to a point that's difficult, that's hard, that's scary, and not pushing them, but teaching them to push themselves through that time is, to me, the most critical skill that they can learn. And that's why I love what we do in martial arts, because we're making it hard on purpose. And the people that get black belt and second degree and third degree, hopefully they at least go on to that level, are getting an education, getting taught that. And then I hope the parents that are listening get the idea that we don't want them to just, send them into karate class, have them do martial arts. We want the parents to see what we're doing and see how we can push the kids, and then model that when there's other obstacles coming up in their life.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, here at King Tiger Martial Arts and schools like yours, we focus on developing the whole person, not just teaching self-defense. So let's break down the character building aspects of the martial arts. With confidence and self-esteem, in your experience, how does martial arts create lasting confidence in children, especially those who struggle with self-doubt?
That's another good question. I mean, confidence and self-esteem to me, I've given a lot of thought to this because we talk about it a lot. And we talk about like lots of other activities and things build confidence. And I don't know if I buy that. I think that there's uniqueness to what we do. In particular, how does confidence or self-esteem get built? And if you think about self-esteem, what that means, it means esteem about myself. So I have to be how do I grow self-esteem is by growing myself. What does that mean? Well, it means more experiences. So I have more knowledge and experiences and more skills. So I have more skills and more capabilities. And the more I grow those things, and the more I'm going to feel like the next one that becomes a challenge, as we referenced before, is easy. And I'll give you an example. Like my son, I took him to when he was 6 years old. I took him to um, uh, where did I take him? Costa Rica. We went to Costa Rica for 3 weeks, and he learned Spanish while he was there. And in
Wow.
Costa Rica, it's a very nice country, but it's poor in many areas. But it was okay. My son got to experience being around that type of culture, where people didn't speak English, where he didn't know what the signs meant, and if we were going to go have ice cream, it was at like a place that was just a cutout cement wall that the guy gave ice cream out of. It was totally different than the United States. And so he got an experience where I believe when he's 23, when he's going to be in a job where he has to go to another country that's completely different, go to China or somewhere else, he's going to be very comfortable with that. And so giving them experiences allows them to be comfortable and then want more experiences and thirst for that rather than being like, oh man, that's really scary. I'm not sure. And we all know the people in that regard that live in the United States and have never been outside of their state or have never traveled outside of the United States, which is fine, but it's limiting. And then the other side of building skills is building skills so that we can know we can do something that we didn't do before. So to me, those two things, experiences and skills, are the keys to self-esteem, not just saying, hey, good job or hey, great. I mean, those things are good, but for parents, if they can expand the experience, expand the skills, then that's how self-esteem gets built. And we're in a perfect position in martial arts to do that.
Excellent. Well, in discipline and self control, you study behavior extensively. How does martial arts provide a structured system for kids to develop discipline and emotional regulation?
Yeah, that's a key thing that we do, and I think a lot of times when we're teaching or when we start martial arts, we know that this happens, but we don't know why. And I think for parents, it's important to know why it happens, because then they can see, hey, all these things that we do, having the kids say yes, sir, having the kids stand at attention, having the kid put their stuff away in the specific place relates to them being in a structure, just like you were in the military in a very disciplined environment. Being in a disciplined structure then allows them to then translate that into being disciplined in other areas. And so if we certainly believe that all those different, very, very many things that we ask them to do in martial arts, how they tie their belt, how they put their uniform on, which side, I mean, your uniform goes this way and this way, or whichever way it goes, it always goes that way. It doesn't go a different way. And getting used to that type of regulation is then helping them, number one, feel comfortable because now they have a pattern that they can follow and the world isn't chaos and that they like that. And then how do I do that? Well, I do that by learning to do things consistently and in a disciplined way. I'm going to have less chaos in my world. When chaos then comes out, I can fix it by being disciplined and regulating myself. So I believe those two things go together. So the short answer is doing lots of things in a very specific, particular way in our martial arts helps them do the specific things in a very particular way. Or again, when we're adults, when we get our kids to be adults, that they can then do it for themselves. My son
Right.
now 23, he lives in California. He's got his own job. He does all his stuff. I mean, I try to give him money, but he doesn't want it. I mean, he's like,
Wow.
which is awesome. But but kind of, I would like to help him, but he doesn't need help. He doesn't need help. He takes care of everything. He deals with it himself. So I think he learned that because of martial arts. And I'll give you the backstory to that. When he was 3 years old, he was diagnosed with autism.
Oh,
Couldn't
wow.
speak, couldn't had a lot of trouble with communication. And his first words that he learned, I say, are "Hiya." in karate. That was like the first thing he could say clearly. And but it's all from this. And then he became an instructor, and he taught, and he ended up being a leader in his football team, captain of the football team, and their defensive lineman of the year, and everything. And that's because he went from having an autism diagnosis, which we think is problematic, to this super level of success, I believe. And I think that relates to discipline and self-control.
That is awesome. I did not know that was a child that had the autism. That's incredible.
Yeah,
Um,
you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know because he's so good at being with people now. So, for all of our parents, and if parents listening or their kid has autism or a developmental issue, obviously martial arts is great for them. But imagine if your kid didn't have any of those issues and you brought them into martial arts, and how much they would accelerate.
right. Absolutely, absolutely. And under our respect and integrity, how does a structured belt system and traditional values in the martial arts reinforce lifelong respect, integrity, and accountability?
You know, I think that we as parents don't have an instruction guide, as I said before. And so if you don't have the instruction guide, your kids are going to learn a lesser version of what you model for them. I mean, if you're 100%, you're respectful to everybody, and you're always shaking people's hand and saying nice things, they'll learn, let's say, 80% of that. They're never going to learn 100% of it. So what we provide is not just another model for them, but a model that's at a very, very high level. I mean, we show, even if you and I, we've known each other for many years, and if you and I we're at dinner, we're going to be we're going to show the martial arts respect even if we're at dinner. It doesn't go away when we're outside of the school, and then that's something that they can model and use. In the belt system, as people move up, then it allows us to feel like we've accomplished stuff. So that helps us with being able to show respect to people that are higher ranked than us, and then we get to understand what respect is for people that are lower ranked than us, and know that we can be, even if they're lower ranked than me, my job is to help them. My job isn't to be, strutting around acting like I'm really, all that. So I think that's how it's respect in a way that's very strong, but also um, compassionate in both directions.
That's great. And then, and the last one in there for the general ones is fitness and self defense. From a scientific and engineering perspective, what makes martial arts one of the best forms of physical and mental conditioning for children?
Well, I think it's one of the best forms of physical and mental conditioning and self-defense. Well, as far as physicalness, I think for adults too. And what we know is that people that go to the gym, join a health club, their average number of weeks they train at that health club in their lifetime is 4 weeks. They do it for 4 weeks and then they quit. And then we wonder why we have an obesity epidemic, and people have bad health problems when they get older. So one of the things that we're learning as adults in martial arts that I love about it is because of the progressive nature of it, because we're learning and using our brain, it's something that makes it really easy to keep doing. It's like it may not be as intense in sometimes because we're learning something slower than, let's say, I was doing an aerobics class, but it's 100 times better because aerobics class gets boring after a while. And what we do continues to help people feel like they're, number one, make progress, feel like they make progress because they can see it. That's what those belts are for, not because there's something magical about the colors. They can see progress, and they get to recognize what they're doing, and then they look forward to the next thing and forward to the next thing. It's really hard, even if you're really great. I've always been in athletics and sports, but it's still really hard. You get a job, you got other stuff to do, and to get out and work out. Now let's translate that for kids. Same thing. They get to look forward to and have a lifestyle that is about working out. I mentioned my son who lives in California now. He doesn't have my schools to train at, and he's still working out. He still lifts weights and he does stuff every day because he's built a lifestyle of that. And so if you want to compare doing like a specific personal training class with a trainer that's working just for you, you might get a more intense workout during that, but you're not going to do it forever. Whereas what we do is a lifestyle, something that you do forever, which I think is what is key to it working. And me and my, I have people who've been with me over 30 years, and they're in their 60s, and they got their own injuries or whatever, but they're way, I mean, imagine if they didn't do martial arts. They would be 50 pounds heavier, out of shape, lots of health problems, diabetes. I'm confident that made that big of a difference in their life.
Yes, I happened to catch the your interview with Senior Master Sanborn.
Oh yeah.
Very insightful. Very insightful.
Yeah, she's 62 years old now, and she still competes and does. I mean, she's a great athlete, but 62, so she's not going to be the same as when she was 22.
Right.
But by continuing to do this and not giving up, she worked out with me every week. We train. We were just sparring a couple days ago. I mean, I still do that. So I mean, that's why it really to me is the best form of fitness that anybody could do.
Yes, sir. Well, at King Tucker Martial Arts and great schools like yours, we know that grit and leadership separate those who succeed from those who quit. How do we build these traits in students? Well, you've researched and written extensively on grit. What exactly is grit, and why is it important that talent when it comes to success?
Yeah, so having the ability to overcome adversity, or when adversity happens, you don't back down.
Right.
Now, it may be that something's so difficult. Granted, if it's so difficult that it's not something I can do at the moment. I understand. Maybe if I had to, if I broke my ankle and I was supposed to climb a mountain, maybe I don't get to do that right then. When we talk about overcoming adversity, um, in most cases, though, it's something that we stop because we have anxiety, as I referenced before. And so, to me, grit is the ability and willingness to overcome challenges and adversity. So we could use adversity. There's a good book called The Adversity Quotient that talks about how people can the degree to which somebody is able to overcome adversity is a very good predictor of their success in the future. And so to me, that's what grit is: being able to overcome adversity and not always like it. I mean, we don't like it when things are adverse. I get it. Things may be a bummer if something's a challenge. So for parents that are listening, it's similar to what we talked about before. How do you develop grit in your kid? Well, it's not yelling at them if they don't do something. It's not yelling at them, but it's teaching them to push themselves through the adversity so they feel like they're capable of doing it later.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, failure is a key part of learning in the martial arts. How does structured failures like belt testing, sparring, overcoming physical and mental challenges develop a student's resilience?
We always have to be careful to push ourselves to the failure point. And we're not like an egg where the failure point it breaks. That's not how humans work. The way humans work is we're what we call, it's a characteristic called anti-fragile, is one that I've done some research on. And the idea of anti-fragile is when something fragile is like an egg, it would break. Something strong is not, you can't break it. A piece of steel, you hit it, you really can't break it. But anti-fragile means when you stress it, when you put it into stress situations, it grows. So, for example, when we lift weights, that stresses our muscles. That's why we get stronger. Our body learns to grow. So we have a lot of things. Our mental process is that way too. And if we don't push ourselves to the edge of failure, for parents, if you don't push your kids to the edge of failure, they're not going to get growth out of that. That's the point at which we have growth. In fact, you can measure that. You can know if your kid is, or ourselves are working to the right level and moving towards growth and excellence if there's some failures involved. If I was Michael Jordan and as good as he was in the pros, and I was playing high school basketball with people and I wiped everybody out, I wouldn't learn skills. If you read about Michael, though, he got cut from his I think his sophomore year in high school. So the failures allowed them. And whenever you hear excellent people, there's always failure is almost always the thing that gave them the lesson, that helped them learn. So I think we do stuff, and you asked about belt sparring, physical challenges. We always want to push you. And one of our charter at my martial arts school is one part of that. There's 4 parts, but one part of that is we don't measure our results based on who we exclude, but on students' constant growth to black belt and beyond. That's part of our fundamental mission.
That's awesome. Yeah, you went over that while we were at the seminar, and it was awesome. Yep. Well,
Good.
leadership isn't just about being in charge, it's about setting an example. How does martial arts naturally teach leadership in children and adults?
So you're asking how it naturally teaches. So there's two answers to that. One is by the structure that we have with the belt ranks, and that we expect the people that are higher belt rank to help the people that are lower belt rank. Just that structure has always been a great leadership tool. The second piece of that is we eventually would like them to become instructors if they do it. So that's a massive thing that somebody who's 12 years old or 15 years old can learn to teach other people. How's that going to work for their jobs and their future and everything else? So those two pieces are important. That's always been part of martial arts. What we do now, though, is we also have specific leadership training that teaches expanded skills about leadership and how to be a leader. And we did that really initially because we wanted to be training our instructors to be better. And what we realized is really all the people, whether they're instructors or not, need this, and they can start learning this stuff when they're white belts, when they're beginners. So the first answer is we've always had that part of leadership as part of it because of what I said, but then also we've taken those pulled those skills out, crystallized them, and then put them into the program. And I know you have a great leadership program too.
I appreciate that, sir. And at King Tiger Martial Arts and great schools like yours, we emphasize leadership training for all students. What advice would you give to parents who want to reinforce these leadership lessons at home?
Watch what we do and copy it. The best thing a parent can do by a million times is to be in class, to be a student. The parents that we see that train with their kids and take class either with their kids or a later class get so much development. It's kind of, I mean, we help kids a lot, but it's then to see a 40-year-old person start martial arts and then they fall in love with it and get to learn and they realize they can be something they didn't know they could realize they could be a person that they didn't know they were capable of. Master Sanborn, you mentioned, she worked in a bookstore when I first met her, and she was the person in back that never talked to anybody.
Oh, wow.
And now, I mean, everybody's afraid of her. I mean, she's like, tough. She's
Uh,
tough, and she runs the show, and so that development. And if you asked her, she probably wouldn't have known that during the way. But when I asked her to look back at where she was back then, it's pretty spectacular. So I think for parents, do what we do, pay attention to the lessons that we teach so that you understand the principles like we're talking about today, and then ultimately do class with them. I mean, that's going to be the best thing. That's not a selling anything at all. It really is truthfully the one of the best things you can do with your kid. There's not many other activities that you can do with your kid. I mean, if you love tennis, you're either going to be a lot better than your kid when they're learning it when they're small, or at some point, me playing my son in basketball, now he beats me all the time. I used to beat him, now he beats me. There's really no real neutral ground in any other activity like this, except for martial arts, where you're all learning to grow together.
yeah, that's absolutely correct. Um, and then coming down to the final stretch, for parents looking to enroll their child in martial arts programs, what should they look for to ensure it provides real character development?
Um, there's a lot of things that are important. I mean, when you go into a school, you're going to know if they're professional, if the school looks nice, it's professional, and like your school or one of my schools. And you do see, I guess the way to answer that is in contrast, a school that doesn't really focus on becoming black belts. So our schools, I probably would say the number one thing would be, in yours is we when you come in, we're talking about black belt from day one, and that's not because there's I mean, there is something magical about getting your black belt, but the purpose of it is so that you become great in all these things that we've talked about, that you really do develop skills that are going to make us better as people and therefore be real self-confidence and self-esteem, back to what we talked about earlier. So if you go into a school and they're right from the get-go talking about becoming black belts, and that's their focus, and they help you and your family set a goal for black belt, then that's going to be something to really look for. And obviously, you guys do that really, really well.
Excellent. And our last question, sir. Dr. Moody, for families in our community considering training in the martial arts and training with us, why is it a perfect time to start training?
Well, the best time is now. I mean, we have people that sometimes I ask, why haven't you started doing exercise? Or they say they need to do exercise. And well, okay, what's keeping you from it? And they go, well, I've got a bad back. Well, I don't have time. Well, I've got, this and that. And look, I mean, I've been doing this a long time. I got injuries myself. The great thing about martial arts is that we can adapt. It's not like somebody has a vision where it's 25-year-olds beating each other up in a kickboxing ring or an MMA ring. That's not what we do in our type of schools, although we could train people for that. And I've trained people to be world champions, and I've trained people to be really good fighters. But that's not the big picture of everything. And you can be any size, shape, age, and injury, and do martial arts. Plus, as far as time goes, which is really people's number one problem, that they're so busy, and I get it. I mean, we're all busy as well, but structuring once or twice a week, really a couple times a week, it doesn't need to be more than that, is all you need to do martial arts. And if you can only figure out one time a week, then come in one time and come visit us so that we can at least get you started and do something. And doing it regularly forever and ever and ever and ever over time is what's going to get you in great shape and get you fit and get all the other skills that we talked about. Doing it again and again forever and ever and ever is that's the only recipe for this. Doing the health club for 4 weeks and quitting, it really had no effect. So doing it a little bit forever and ever, ever, and it's really not much of a time commitment. And any of those injuries or those other things that you might say, we would call them excuses, and I respect that those are real to people. They're 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 overcomable. So if the big message here is overcoming adversity is how you become great, then that's a great way to overcome adversity.
Wow, Dr. Moody, your insights today have been incredible. Thank you for sharing your expertise. And for the parents listening, if you're ready to help your child build confidence, grit, and leadership, come visit us at King Tiger Martial Arts. We're here to help your child succeed, not just in the martial arts, but in life. See you on the mat. And I am Dojo Dan.